Welcome into episode 484 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridgette Proulx and Scott McLaughlin. And Bridgette and Scott, training camp is over. We are at the opening week of the NHL season. How do you guys feel? It's been a long summer, but we're finally here.
Yeah, I am excited. Like, I know expectations of this Bruins team are lower, and, it feels like everyone I talk to, it's like, so what's a realistic expectation for this team? Like, can they even push for a playoff spot? And my honest answer is, like, I don't know. Maybe. Like, we'll see. I think their ceiling is, like, squeak in, which doesn't sound the most exciting, but yet I am excited for the season. Like, I know Bridget and I were at college games this weekend. Like, just being back at regular season hockey was great. And now, obviously, we have Bruins opening night coming up Wednesday, home opener Thursday. So, yeah, we'll see if I still feel this way in a month. But right now, yeah, I'm excited that regular season hockey's back.
Well, Charlie Jacobs said it's like Christmas morning.
That was a little strong.
Yeah, the roster that they had, he said, it's Christmas morning. So.
Well, when you have the season that they did last year, and apparently they have a 12,000 person wait list for their season tickets still, he should feel like it's Christmas morning because they're probably lucky to be in that situation right now. But yeah, we'll break it all down. Obviously, like I said off the top, there's training camp is over, so we do know what the Bruins roster is heading into opening night on Wednesday. But for right now, we'll start it off with our opening shifts, and I'll go first because before we break down the roster for this season, it is worth mentioning that Zdeno Chara will have a banner raising ceremony. His number 33, not 44, Scott, 33, will go to the rafters.
Almost 44.
Yeah, I tweeted out a picture of how it started versus how it's going, and it was obviously Chara's introductory press conference way back in 06, and the funny part about that is that the jersey they designated for him was number 44 at the time. So then Scott had a nice little funny.
You probably do know why? Do you know why?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Number 33 was taken at the time by one Hannu Toivonen.
Was Toivonen 33?
Yeah.
Huh. And was Andrew Alberts 44 when he played for the Bruins?
Now that I don't know.
I think we'll have to look that up. Aaron Ward was 44 a few years later.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, so very well deserved for Chara. My commentary on it briefly online when I saw the announcement was that it's just incredibly well deserved. A one-of-a-kind culture changer, defender, and Hall of Famer, both on and off the ice, and it's wonderful to see his number get raised.
Yeah, obviously a no-brainer, something that we knew would come at some point. You just don't know exactly when, but makes sense to do it now. Like, it's not something you have to wait on, right? Like, I don't know if the Bruins even formally have you have to have been retired so long or whatever, but it's like, you're retiring Zdeno Chara's number. You can do it now. He's back in the organization, has a job as a advisor and mentor that they announced obviously last week. And it makes sense for him to be he'll be the first of the post-Bork Bruins era. And that makes a ton of sense because, Bergeron played a little longer, so Chara's been out longer. But Chara was also, as you mentioned, the culture changer. He's the guy who came in, half a year after the Joe Thornton trade, a little over half a year. That trade was in November. Chara signs in July the following summer. And that's when it shifts. It took a year or two to build up after that, but that is when you look at that 2011 Cup and you go, okay, what are the moments that led up to this? It's that's the starting point. Signing Zdeno Chara and Mark Savard, but that day, July 1st of free agency 2006 is where it changes.
Yeah, and Don Sweeney said when they brought Chara, they put out a video if people wanted to see. It's Cam Neely walking Chara out to the floor in TD Garden and telling him, do you see that we made space between, what were the two numbers that are, what was it? I don't know.
It was Bork,
between
77 and Oh boy.
The other number was like much lower. So anyway, they made space.
Well,
for his
was it
jersey.
Terry O'Reilly 24?
It would have
Was
to be
that?
somewhat. It would have to be a little bit before 33, obviously, and
Yeah,
then 77. So yeah.
So he shows him the space, and then Chara is all surprised, and Don Sweeney said, "I don't know why he was surprised because it's obvious like we were gonna do this at some point."
Yeah, I mean, Scott mentions the first banner raising in the post Bork era. So obviously beyond Chara, 37's obvious. 63 and 46, you think those are obvious?
I think 63 is obvious. 46, I think eventually it happens, but I could see that being one that maybe drags out a little bit. I mean, like I think of like Terry O'Reilly had to wait a while. Rick Middleton had to wait a really long time. And it's like, that's not necessary, but I do wonder if David Krejci's one where, you know, Bergeron's going to be coming up in the next year or two after Chara. Marchand will be, call it 5 years after he retires or whatever, something like that. I do wonder if maybe Krejci has to wait a little longer, but I think that probably happens eventually. And, you know, I wonder about any others for this era. No goalie has had his number retired in Bruins history. That feels like it sets a precedent that like it probably won't happen for Tim Thomas or Tuukka Rask. But yeah, I would say it's the three definites with Chara, Bergeron, Marchand.
I think, you know, probably 15, 20 years from now, I think maybe 88 is probably a safe one too if his career continues the way that it has.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, even if it's without a championship to his name at that point. But
I hope 46 gets one. I mean, I always like David Krejci, so.
Well, he's as instrumental as it gets for that 2011 championship in that era. I mean, obviously, you know Chara and Timmy and whatnot, but I mean, up front, I mean, Krejci's as big as anybody. Obviously, Horton had a big spring and all that stuff, but if we're talking that era,
yeah, it'll be interesting. I do think like probably want to space them out a little bit, right? Like, you don't want to be doing like one a year, so they'll space it out a little.
There's no numbers left.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Is like you also don't want to be the Celtics who like retire it for like guys who are the sixth man on a championship team, and it's like, all right, probably could have pared this down a little, been a little more selective at some point, but yeah, like you know the Bruins though, like there's a standard there in terms of like I look at like Terry O'Reilly as someone who like. That kind of sets a bar. And like Terry O'Reilly has the added benefit of being like kind of the prototypical Bruin and obviously a fan favorite. And he was a captain later in his career. So like, I'm not arguing that like Terry O'Reilly shouldn't be retired. He should, like, that's fine. But like, that does set the standard of like, that's someone who didn't win a Stanley Cup, who wasn't one of the best players in the league during his era. So, like, by that standard, it's like, well, David Krejci did win a cup and was a huge part of it. So, you know, I certainly see that argument.
Well, and where does he rank all time in Bruins scoring, Krejci? He's
top
top
10.
5, right?
I don't know if he's top 5. He's top 10 for sure.
Okay.
I think he might be top 5 in assists.
Okay, yeah. Okay. All right. Bridgette, any final thoughts on Chara? Do you want to move on to the rest of the opening shifts?
No, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go, and as you mentioned off the top, like we know the roster now. Final cuts were made Sunday, actually, you know, more than 24 hours out from the deadline. The deadline's Monday at 5 p.m., which, as we're recording, we're actually an hour short of. So shout out to the Bruins for wrapping it up early, barring any surprises. But the final cuts didn't. So hold on. I had the list up and X out of it, but here we go. So Matt Poitras was sent down to Providence, and then 4 players were placed on waivers. Forwards, Mattei Blumel and Alex Steeves. Defenseman, Jonathan Aspero. Goalie, Michael DiPietro. And then we found out Monday afternoon, those guys all cleared waivers. I do think there was at least some speculation that perhaps one or both of Blumel or DiPietro could be claimed. I saw The Athletic posted a piece Monday morning. And it was like I think they might have gotten to 10, like most intriguing players on waivers after Sunday's cutdowns. And Blumel and DiPietro were both on there, which is like kind of funny to think about because it's like the whole narrative is, you know, how weak the Bruins roster is, and yet like apparently they had two of the most intriguing cuts, but those guys weren't claimed. So what it left them with is, we know Fraser Minten won a spot in the opening night lineup. He is on the team. He'll be the third line
Excuse me,
center.
this is my opening shift. Cut.
Johnny, I'm going through who made it. Johnny
Okay,
Beecher.
that's gonna be my shift.
I mentioned him for 2 seconds, Bridgette. Relax. Johnny Beecher and Jeffrey VL made it as the extra forwards up front. We can get into how we feel about that. Jordan Harris makes it as the extra defenseman. And of course, they went with the two goalies, Swayman and Korpisalo. Marco Sturm said on Monday that they did not give much thought to keeping a third goalie. So it seems like they were either confident that DiPietro would get through waivers or willing to risk losing him because they were just comfortable with what they already had in Boston.
All right, that'll do it for my opening shift.
No, you got to expand upon.
All right,
upon
I'll narrow it down because I was planning on talking mostly about Fraser Minten anyway. I was gonna wrap in the other guys that made it, but I guess I'll just go right to him because he was talked about a lot in today's press conference, and for good reason. He was somebody that we didn't know where to project. He was a bubble guy. He is the only one of those bubble guys that made it because Blumel is gone and Patra's gone and like Lysell we don't think was close, and all the players we were talking about, I guess Beecher we thought maybe would be an extra forward, which he ends up being, and then Kuznetsov looks like on the fourth line.
Which one? Which fourth line?
But Minten was the young guy that we weren't sure, and he ends up making the team. And there was an answer Sweeney gave about the prospect pool, the Bruins prospect pool, and how it's gotten deeper. And he specifically said, I want to give kudos to our staff for making sure that we got Fraser Minten in that trade for Carlo, that they were adamant that he had to be part of the deal or they weren't making it. And he's, depth in the prospect pool that's immediately going to use this year and did last year as well. And then obviously they get the picks and Hagens, and there's still more picks to come. But he also said that Sturm, it shows that Sturm has confidence in him where he is slotted right now at 3C, and mentioned that the fact that Zacha is playing wing is a vote of confidence for Fraser Minten because it wasn't a certainty that that's what was going to be the case. They were genuinely considering going Elias Lindholm, Pavel Zacha, Casey Middlestat as the three centers, and Minten they felt comfortable enough with putting there. And that's a big responsibility, with his age and having to somehow drive that line and to have a little bit more production, which we can get into later what the middle six, offensive upside might be. But I guess they were really happy with what they saw from him in training camp. He didn't have the most flashy training camp, but he did the things right that they wanted him to do. Proved himself to not be a liability. And he said also that he can play more freely on that line because he thinks like Jeannot and Asimont will, what did he say? He said they'll keep the flies away. Basically, like they're making sure no one hurts him, and they'll also, since they're veterans, be able to cover him defensively as well.
Yeah, well, the Maple Leafs did not want to trade Fraser Minten, right? Like he was a bright young prospect for them, but you acquire Brandon Carlo in an effort to win a Stanley Cup, shore up your top four defense, and that's the price you have to pay. And so it's not like they were happy to get rid of him, but it was the price of business. And the sentiment when the Bruins traded for Minten was that in Toronto, they were expecting him to potentially be their third-line center as soon as this year. And that's the Toronto Maple Leafs offense, which is certainly a little bit deeper than the Bruins forward group. So, and all summer, the three of us talked about how Minten had the inside track to the third-line center. But then in the middle of training camp, the Bruins kind of threw us a wrinkle by having Zacha play center and Middlestat play center and Lindholm play center. So then I was like, okay, then maybe Minten doesn't have the inside track just because the Bruins might be opting for more established center depth. And
yeah, I think it was after the 4th preseason game, I said I'm like 90% sure Blumel makes the roster, and I was like, maybe they go middle stat 3C, and I had Minten off of it, which is
right.
There were plenty of indications that was the direction it was going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there were days of practice when they first split practice into like the NHL group and then the B group that actually practiced with Ryan Mougenel. Fraser Minten was skating on the 5th line at that time. Like they had their line set, and he was the 5th line center. And as we talked about with both him and Poitras, it's like neither one of them is going to be on the 5th line in Boston. They're not going to be extra forwards. They have to play every night. So at that point, it did seem like he was slightly on the outside looking in, but obviously, there was still a week and a half at camp or whatever at that point, and he finished strong and played probably his best game in the preseason finale on Saturday against the Rangers, where, I tweeted and like I not in a joking way at all, but after the shift where he sets up Nikita Zadorov for the first goal of the game, he had started that shift by killing 2 plays in the defensive zone, and it was just a great 200-foot shift. And I tweeted right after, I was like, Fraser Minten, you are a Boston Bruin. It's like, if there was any doubt left, you almost didn't even need to see the rest of the game. Like, it was sealed there. It's like, yeah, that's a player who gets it. Like, that's a player who can play in the NHL. And, my only concern, and I've kind of mentioned this at times, is I think the perfect place for Fraser Minten to break into the NHL would be as the 4th line center, because then the offense is not as much of a question mark. You don't need as much offense from your 4th line as your 3rd line. You put him with 2 veterans, and I thought that'd be like a really nice place for him to break in, because he is defensively responsible enough to handle that role. You break him in on the 3rd line, there's an expectation of offense there. I've said it before, 3rd lines in the NHL need to score. You can't have, like, this team might think that they can do it, but you can't have 2 lines that don't score. You just can't. You're not going to win in the NHL. So that will be a challenge for Minten, because it is still a part of his game that needs development and needs work. And it's a byproduct of Don Sweeney and this front office over the summer signing so many veteran 4th liners. There was not a spot for a kid like Fraser Minten to be on the 4th line because they already filled it up. So he had to be 3rd line or Providence. And to his credit, he won the 3rd line job.
Yeah, he's the player that forced the hand, right? And the others didn't. Brian, I know that when we were talking before recording, and Scott said, maybe he should be starting on the 4th line, you said...
Oh boy, I don't remember.
I also don't remember.
He said he is starting on the 4th line. They just have 2 4th lines.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I know.
Guys, your memories. Jeez.
I'm old, Bridgette.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
I have trouble remembering the last 5 minutes, but yeah. I mean, so let's start with some surprises, right? As far as this final roster construction, because Bridgette, to your point earlier, we're going to get into the middle 6 and the bottom 6 and their scoring potential or lack thereof and all those things. But Scott, why don't we go to you and mention any surprises from the final roster?
Well, I was surprised Blumel didn't make it, and I would say probably the least surprised of this group. If we talked last week about Mattei Blumel, and I thought he had struggled a little bit his final preseason game. I thought he had fallen off a bit as camp had gone on. And clearly the Bruins agreed, because he went from starting camp on the 2nd line, skating with Pavel Zacha, to not making the team and getting sent down to Providence. So obviously in their eyes, he fell off as well. That said, I still did not expect him to get cut. I still thought he would be on the team, maybe as an extra forward. And because I thought, when you look at 2 extra forward spots, I thought maybe the Bruins would like the dynamic of, okay, 1 extra forward who can go into the 3rd line if we need it, or maybe even the 2nd line in a pinch, and 1 extra forward who can be another 4th liner, which I thought would be Johnny Beecher or maybe Jeffrey VL or even Alex Steeves, who could potentially do like a little bit of both. Alex Steeves played in the middle 6 in camp, in preseason games, and on the 4th line. obviously that's not what they went with. They went with Johnny Beecher and Jeffrey Viel, who are different kinds of players, but both ultimately fourth liners, max.
Well, and I guess, like, who's Nadinov could technically be a guy that you keep that we thought maybe was an extra forward that can play third or fourth line, and seems like he's going to start on the fourth line, but he's maybe the flexible guy of that group.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons Beecher made the team is because they're still a little unsure of their penalty killing situation. They are trying guys who have not done much killing in recent years, including Mikey Eyssimont, Tanner Jeannot. Obviously, Fraser Minton's going to kill penalties. And Marco Sturm's talked about that. He said, like, when he's been asked about some of these guys who haven't done a ton of killing in the past, Mark Kastelic is another one. And he's like, well, yeah, we need guys. We need guys to kill penalties. So Beecher is at least someone who's done it. So I think, like, providing depth on the PK is another reason he's here, in addition to faceoffs. But then, like, I'm watching practice Monday, and I'm looking. We know what the first power play unit is. In case people don't, it's Charlie McAvoy, quarterback, David Pastrnak, Morgan Geekie, Elias Lindholm, and Pavel Zacha. The second unit, Mate Blumel was on it all camp.
Yep.
He was set up on the right elbow, taking one-timers. Now it is Marat Husnudinov in that spot, who they didn't start using on the power play until, like, within the last week of camp.
I had a, like, bad feeling about him, like, either not making the team or being the extra forward because of the usage that he was in during preseason. Yeah. He wasn't getting those looks, and he wasn't, you know, he wasn't playing a lot of the preseason games the way that Poitras was, and other players that maybe were going to jump past him. But it would be interesting if he ended up on the second power play unit.
He's on the second power play unit.
I mean,
because here's what I'm getting.
I mean.
They don't have any other options. Like,
yes.
It has to be him on it, and there's no depth behind it. Because if you look at, like, if he doesn't work out, like, who do you put there? It's like Mikey Eyssimont?
Go two defensemen?
I don't know. They have two defensemen on the unit already.
Oh, yeah.
It's Hampus Lindholm, Mason Lohrei, Casey Middlestad, Victor Arvidsson, and Marat Husnudinov. So at other points in camps, Blumel was out there, Poitras was out there. They're not on the team anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason I was surprised, because I'm like, all right, so you kept penalty kill depth, but there was, like, no power play depth. You have, like, one unit, and then I guess the second unit you'll just throw out there for 20 to 30 seconds and, like, hope they do something.
But at least Jeffrey Viel, and we touched on this last episode, in a vacuum, he had a good camp. Like, he took advantage of his opportunity. So if he wins the job as the 14th forward or whatever, it's like, okay, fine. Win it over John Beecher, who had a shit year last year and didn't have that great of a camp. And I'm surprised that even if it was a 1% chance that they risked losing Blumel for some of the, you know, hopeful optimism that he could be at least a depth scorer for you in a team that desperately needs it. They risked losing him for Beecher, who, if I'm being honest, guys, I feel like the biggest reason why he wasn't waived is because I think there's an element of, you know, waving the white flag on a Bruins draft pick. Like, I think I think him being a Bruins draft pick is a slight advantage for him. And then yes, he can take draws, he can penalty kill, but all right, there's a lot more to the game, and he has to show a lot more. So I'm not like pissed off that Johnny Beecher's an extra forward. I just don't think he's earned it over the last year. But
it's fair to say over the last year, yes. I do think he earned it, or certainly made a push over the second half of camp. He had a bad first preseason game. I thought he bounced back with a really good second game, a solid third game. I highlighted on our last episode last week, you know, he was a big part of protecting a 1-goal lead in the third period. Like, that is a valuable skill set. It's not sexy or flashy, but, like, that matters. So I did like the way he responded after not just bad preseason game, but then being demoted to Group B for 2 practices, practicing with Ryan Mougenel and the basically the future Providence Bruins. So I did like that. Like, some other guys I thought stayed up and down, or even like Blumel trailed off towards the end of camp. I do think Beecher had a strong finish, and that's really probably the only reason he's here, because he was not trending towards making this team halfway through camp.
what I really come out of it thinking is I feel worse about the offense, right? Like, wouldn't you feel better about the middle six offensive upside if Blumel or Patra was there? Because like that's the takeaway for me.
Some sort, like, Blumel with his shot, Patra with his playmaking, like something that adds noticeable offense to the group, or to at least have as an option. Now you don't, like, to the joke that Brian made before the podcast and we all forgot about, except for Bridgette. Like, they do have 2 fourth lines now. Like, that is basically what the bottom 6 is. I'm sure they hope that Mikey Eyssimont has more offense than he's shown in the past, or Tanner Jeannot, if he doesn't get back to 25 goals or whatever, can he get back to 15? I'm sure they're hoping for that, but like, based off those guys' production, like, those are fourth liners, and now they're playing on your third line.
Well, the good news is that all's well that ends well, because everybody that the Bruins put on waivers made it through. So the Providence Bruins are going to be pretty damn good. I mean, you're going to have...
they're going to be scoring like crazy.
So you have Georgi Merkulov, you have Matt Patra, Dan Zloshmelis, Matej Blumel, and Alex Steeves. And Merkulov, Steeves, and Blumel, because they've been there for so long the last few years,
You forgot Lysell, I think.
I may have said him, but if not, sure, him too. But Steeves, Merkulov, and Blumel in particular, they might
have the best top 6 in AHL history.
They're 3 of the top 10 scorers in the AHL over the last 2 years. So they'll be fine. But just real quick, I want to read this off because you guys may have seen me tweet this out. But Tanner Jeannot, Mark Kastelik, Mikey Eyssimont, Sean Corrali, Jeffrey Viel, John Beecher, Husnudinov, and Fraser Minten, they account for 8 of the 14 Bruins roster spots, right? Now, obviously...
Forward spots, yeah.
Yes, sorry. Obviously, they all won't be in the same lineup unless there's a ton of injuries, but they have 388 combined points in 1,573 games. So now, obviously, all those players I just mentioned off, they're not all created equally, right? Like Fraser Minten, Murat Husnudinov, they have small sample sizes. They're younger, better skill set than a lot of the guys I just mentioned. But the point is, the Bruins are relying on more than half of their rostered forwards to do something that they have not done at the NHL level or not done consistently enough. And it's, okay, hey, piss and vinegar hockey, Cam. Knock your socks off, right?
Yeah, that is Brian's referencing a quote from Cam. Bridget and I were over at Bruins season opening press conference at the Garden, actually technically in the Verizon Tower where the Bruins front offices are. Charlie Jacobs, Cam Neely, Don Sweeney all met with the media, and yeah, Cam Neely talked about the Bruins needed more piss and vinegar at the bottom of their lineup in their bottom 6. It seems like that was going to be a point of emphasis. Anyways, what was even more interesting was he did acknowledge that they wanted to add offense in free agency and were unable to. And obviously, we know why. We covered this at the time. Guys just didn't make it to free agency. Like, there was a list of forwards who seemed pretty intriguing that you might want to go after, and like 80% of them re-signed before free agency started. So you were left, even Brock Besser signed day of. So you were left with basically like the Nick Ehlers sweepstakes, and we got reports that he never had any interest in coming to Boston. So
I wonder if it was Marner that they were referring to when they alluding to offensive players that they were wanting to pursue.
I never got the sense that the Bruins were going to make a serious push for Marner. I think it was Besser and Ehlers. I think it was that next step down. I believe they had interest in both those players. Besser never even got to the open market, and Ehlers didn't want to come here. So they really never even got a chance to get in. Like, you don't even have to get into, like, did they pay enough or whatever? Like, they never even really had a chance to get into a bidding war for those guys. They turned out not to be options for them. So I don't think Mitch Marner would have wanted to come here either. I also don't think the Bruins were, at least from what I understand, I don't think they were mounting like a serious pursuit of Mitch Marner.
It would have been hard. It would have required sacrificing other things. I don't know if they were prepared to, but
While we're on player movement real quick, let's just quickly mention Connor McDavid signed an extension for 2 years. What was it, 12.5 annual?
12.5.
So to me, and I tweeted this out, usually the bridge deal is the team to the player. Prove it. This seems like the opposite.
Yeah, it is. Like, Connor McDavid could have gotten whatever he wanted up to whatever the maximum salary is in the NHL right now, $19 million or whatever. He obviously took way less to stay. Connor McDavid at 12.5 is now like the best bargain in the NHL for the next 2 years after this. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's, hey, I'm doing the team a real solid here. We've been close. Obviously, they've been in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. Here is the window to get over the top and get me to spend my whole career in Edmonton. And it feels like if they don't get there, or if they take a step back, then I could see, it'll be 3 years out from now because McDavid had 1 year left and then these 2 years tacked on.
Mm-hmm.
Then I could see him actually going to open market.
which, by the way, what he's doing is he's leaving an extra like $6 or so million in cap space for them to sign other players to have a better roster around him. So it's smart if he really. It shows he's very much dedicated to winning the Stanley Cup in the next 2 seasons because he's taking the pay cut in order to have a better team around him, which we've seen the Bruins, like certain Bruins, do in the past, like Bergeron and
Tom Brady did it for a long time.
Certainly not. Well, at least in hockey, like not to this extent. Like I can't.
Yeah, he's leaving like $8 million on the table.
I mean, Sidney Crosby will probably be the only other one. Like he kept taking those $8.7 million deals because 8.7 is his favorite number. And there was a time where it was like, oh, Crosby could easily get like 10, 11, 12, be at the top of the market, whenever that was 5 years ago, and he still took his 8.7. So that, but even then, like that's leaving $3 million on the table, and Connor McDavid's leaving like $6 to $7 million on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because everybody can kind of see the writing on the wall as to why he's doing this, this probably won't have much of an impact in free agency next summer, for teams having more leverage. But hey, Connor signed for this.
Right. Like, like a team can try that. No agent's going to go for it. Right. Because what the agent's going to do is, Kirill Kaprizov signed for $17 million.
Right, yeah.
So,
right.
Exactly. That's if those two sides are trying to use those two different scales, then there's going to be a lot of guys going to free agency next summer because nothing's going to get done.
And like I alluded to, everybody knows why McDavid signed. Everybody sees what he's doing and why he's doing it. Okay, so what are some other main takeaways from training camp and from the media availability in your guys' opinion right now?
So it was interesting. So Kevin Paul Dupont always asks the season ticket type of questions and business side of stuff. And so Charlie Jacobs touched on that and mentioned, as you referenced earlier, like they still have 12,000 people on their season ticket waiting list. He said they had a 94, almost 95% renewal rate this season. And, said like they're fortunate that fans still care the way that they do. I asked a follow-up about, if that changes and fan interest goes down, like, does that affect how this organization approaches this retool? And he didn't really directly answer that. He basically just thanked fans like for sticking it out and still being invested after last season. And then Cam Neely, I addressed the question to Charlie Jacobs. He gave his answer, and then Cam Neely jumped in and added that, like, yeah, but we also know what fans' expectations are, and we know we didn't meet it last year, and felt like you got a more forceful answer from Cam as far as, yeah, we do need to be better, and like we're well aware that our fans could go away if we're not, and if this turns into something worse. So I thought that was interesting. Like, again, I think it's Charlie Jacobs like says he's not taking fans for granted, but I do think sometimes it kind of comes across that way. Whereas Cam, for as much as he sometimes can step in these press conferences, I thought that was like a better answer of
That
like
was a save.
yeah.
I appreciated him saying that because he could have not followed that up and just let that answer from Jacobs stand on its own. But it's when I heard that from Charlie, I was like, well, do you not, to tie it back into Chara? I mean, do you not remember how empty the Garden was for a couple of years prior to even when you brought Chara in that first year? So I thought Cam saying what he said was a good acknowledgement to the crux of what you were actually getting at, Scott.
Yeah, and I guess so. My main takeaways were that this is going to be a very defensive oriented team. It's going to have to be because we mentioned the cuts that they made were the offensive guys. My question that I asked was about middle six, offensive upside, and what do you think their capabilities? Basically, they spent a good chunk of the first half of the press conference talking about being defensive and even to their admission not being able to add offensive guys in free agency and stuff like that. So then I wanted to follow up and be like, okay, well, but what about the offense?
Right.
Like, what about your middle six offense? And I mean, there really wasn't much there. Like, he said, we got Zaka, Middlestat, Arvidsson, and that's, going to have to make up for some of the scoring, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It just felt like there wasn't much to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly obvious what's going on here, and guys, my opinion, especially seeing how this final roster is shaping out, and we talked about no Poch, no Blumel, I think that yes, they're gonna rely on structure, defense, the health of McAvoy, Lindholm, a bounce back from Swayman, special teams at least being middle of the pack, and yeah, they need Pasta to be Pasta, and they need Lindholm and Zaka, Middlestat, Arvidsson to try to support.
And Geeky to do what he did last year.
Geeky, of course, as
Or
well.
better.
But the rest of the forward lineup, to me, it seems like a lot of the players that they have on this roster in the bottom six, to me, are the Bruins acknowledging their lack of offense and kind of overcompensating with that with just an abundance of size, physicality, where they're gonna go on the forecheck every shift. They're gonna bang in the corners, bang in front of the net, and try to out muscle and maybe out intimidate some of these teams. Now
It's like
it's
in
not
college hockey where like there's plenty of college hockey teams who are like run and gun, and you're like, okay, this team's gonna beat you with their skill, and
Right.
then there's like, and then you have like Cornell, who's just gonna beat the crap out of you and make like be impossible to play against.
It's not the league the NHL is these days, but I kind of look at it as the Bruins saying, at least like with Matt Patra and Matej Blumel, like they have more offensive upside, but they're kind of easy to play against. And I kind of look at the Bruins as saying, you know what, at least we can have ourselves a short-term identity of being a really tough team to play against, and hopefully they'll bully their way into some offense. I mean, we'll see if it works out for them, and I think it's a short-term approach, but I think that's my read on it.
Yeah, and it's gonna be fascinating too, because like when we talk about like being a more defensive team, and Cam Neely was even asked about like trying to win games 2-1, and he said like we'll win however we have to, like whatever it takes. That's how we want to play, and it's like that's all great, but like how that looks matters, because if you're playing low scoring games and you are getting through the neutral zone and you're forechecking hard and you're setting up offensive zone possessions and you're controlling play and you just don't have like the finishing touch, you can win some games that way, like because you're not giving the other team chances. If you're buried in your own zone and the defensive style hockey we're talking about is just like running around the D zone, clogging up shooting lanes and playing that way, that gets old and breaks down really quick.
And
like you just can't spend a lot of time in your own zone. So
that's how you get injuries. And
yeah, like that's not a winning formula. So I'm really interested to see what this looks like, because I also beyond like, does this team have scoring talent? I still don't know if they have talent to like control play and have offensive zone possession. Like, I think that's a question mark. So we're gonna find out. Like, one of this team's biggest problems last year, and like, yeah, structure would break down and effort even, but it was like, think about how often they were going entire periods like spent in their own zone and getting outshot like 12-1, and it's like, I don't care how structured you are or how committed you are to defense, that team is just gonna break eventually. Like, you can't play bend but don't break defense for 82 games. So I'm just really fascinated like how it looked. Like, I think this team still has to be able to attack and be on the front foot, even if their identity is defense, because you can't pack it in.
Which must, like, that will have to come from the forecheck, like force a turnover. That's the way maybe those bottom two lines generate their offenses.
Yeah, well,
Forecheck,
and it comes
turnover.
from clean breakouts, and it comes from getting through the neutral zone with speed, and it comes from killing, suffocating other teams in the neutral zone, which we've seen them trapping. Which I asked Sturm about, and he said, like, they're playing a little bit of hybrid, and like, it's gonna take a while for everyone to be on the same page in terms of like when to trap and when not to. But like, it's clear that's going to be part of their DNA. Like, certainly if they're not getting through the neutral zone in possession, they have to dump it in and can't get a clean retrieval, they're going to trap. If they're dumping in and going off for a change, the line stepping on is going to trap. So, and it's really not a 1-3-1, and it's been more of like a 1-2-2 or even like a 1-4. It's almost like 4 flat across the back, and then like the wingers have the ability to like read the play and attack and like put pressure on. So again, like, that has to be effective. Like, teams can't just like chip past you and go in and get it instead of possession.
Yeah, I think the Bruins, like, if you were to ask them, I think they just want to try to relatively break even at 5-on-5 and then have good special teams and good goaltending, and that's. I think they would even admit to us, like, they probably think at best like they're a wild card team, right? Like, at best, everything goes well, and the way I feel about this team right now is ultimately they talk about wanting to play with some piss and vinegar, wanting teams to see them on their schedule and say, oh shit, we don't want to play the Bruins in this game, and wanting to be a tough out. And I think all of those things are going to happen. I do think they're going to be tough to play against. I do think they'll have piss and vinegar. I do think they'll be a hard out. But an out's still an out, is it not?
Sure is.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, now that, and look, that doesn't mean you can't build for something. Maybe you are building yourself as a hard team to play against. And then, like we talked about, like the skill kind of comes in later with Hagens down the line and a free agent in the summer and maybe a hockey trade. Like, I don't doubt that those things are the next steps of this plan. But there's no doubt that this team is, I mean, I read off the numbers earlier for their bottom 6 forwards and some extra forwards. It's not, they haven't done it yet. So, like, we'll see what happens. It's why you play the games. But
I also don't think they're fully done replenishing their prospect pool based on what he was talking. And obviously every year you get a chance in the draft, but I mean, in like a high end way. And so, like, while they were talking about that, I'm thinking to myself, all right, did they accumulate some guys that they think, okay, this could be a piece we move at the deadline kind of guy, like an identity guy, like that you're like, okay, the problem with that is Jeannot's contract, but like, would someone take that on to?
No, it's not Jeannot. It's
not Jeannot, but
it's Victor Arvidsson with 1 year left.
Yeah.
It's Casey Middlestat 2 years left. If he puts up some points, it's Andrew Peeke, an expiring free agent. Like,
maybe Zacha.
Yeah, Zacha for sure with his salary and another year after this. Like, yeah, those are the guys who like are all in elevated roles if they can actually have some production. In the case of the forwards, or in the case of Peake, be a good partner for Hampus Lindholm. Those are guys who build value and become easy to flip if you end up slipping out of this as you approach this year's deadline.
I don't think they look at it as a terrible thing, because I think that Sweeney said he knows that, all of these years that we went for it, we depleted our prospect pool. We sent prospects away. We sent draft picks away. They're still not back to where they want to be. So if this doesn't end up being a contender, I just think that they're fine with moving those pieces that you mentioned, like replenishing the prospect pool even more, maybe trying to identify other young guys that other teams have currently, make a trade like that, get more first round picks if they can, and that in the long run might be what's better for them to do.
Well, and I also thought it was interesting that Cam Neely talked about when he was talking about how they didn't add any, a higher end offensive guy in free agency. He said that's something we're going to continue to look for into the season. Mm-hmm. Which again, like, I'm of the belief that Cam Neely generally does not lie during these things. Like, I actually think he's one of the few people in like any management position anywhere who generally tells you the truth. So I thought that was interesting because it also tells me, like, okay, maybe if they are a little better than expected, they're going to be on the lookout. And obviously not for a rental. This team is not in position to trade for a rental, but someone with term, or if it's not a rental, one of these guys approaching free agency that they can kind of pre-negotiate an extension with.
Yeah.
Like we bring on Martin Necas all the time. Like that's kind of an obvious one. Like I could see that as well. But it was interesting, like, hearing Neely say that, because it's like now you kind of put the pressure on yourselves where if this team gets off to a good start and hey, they're in it January, heading into the Olympic break, but it's clear they still need more offense. Like, we can look back on this and reference this and be like, you already kind of planted the seed that, like, you're going to look to add. So,
yeah, I mean, I just think, you have a lot of Bruins fans out there that will say the best thing for this team is to suck, to be a lottery team, and to have a best chance of drafting Gavin McKenna. And look, obviously, like, if the Bruins are in a situation organically to draft Gavin McKenna, like that's great, right? But before we get to that point, you could still be in a situation where you're competitive this year, you're contending for a wild card, maybe you make the playoffs, maybe you don't, but you're an okay team, but you have at least James Higgins on the horizon. And if we're talking about a situation where hypothetically it's this team adds James Higgins next year and Martin Necas, and then you also have Toronto's pick, which will probably be between 20 and 23 overall, and then you have your own pick, which is probably mid first round in a deep draft. It's like there's a lot that you can build on going forward this season, right? So you don't want to just like have a shit year.
Is that a first round exit you're calling for Toronto?
Well, I'm definitely.
We are gonna have a season preview, by the way. People listening, if obviously we're still doing more kind of reacting to Monday's press conferences, cuts, all that, yeah. But like dropping. I think we're aiming to drop that Wednesday morning. It's the day of the opener. We will have a full season preview for both the Bruins and looking around the league.
Does Boston's pick acquired from Toronto have anything to do with how far they go in the playoffs?
I don't think so. I think it's just this year flat.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just anticipating them being a top 10 team in the league again, but in the regular season, that is. But my point is, like, and you've talked about this in the past, Scott. Like, you got to be careful, like, just wanting a team to suck. Like, I don't know. It's a dangerous vibe.
Karma off.
It's a dangerous.
Yeah, it's the Bruins are trying to build culture. Tanking and sucking is a good way to kill culture. Like those two things are at odds with each other. You don't build a culture while also sucking for a pick. Like those two things are incongruent. Like they don't go together. So, you end up in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes because enough things go wrong this year. They don't break your way. Maybe there's injuries again. And you end up bad enough to sell at the deadline. And then post-deadline, you suck. And you lose down the stretch like they did last year. Like that's how you end up in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes. It's not by tanking the whole season, which, again, beyond killing this one season, also pisses off David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy and other veterans and just sets a bad example for Fraser Minten and anyone else you're trying to break into this group. Like, you don't tank on purpose. You tank with quote fingers when you accidentally just suck that much, and then you can embrace it down the stretch.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you sell off and know that that's the direction.
And how much would it suck to to finish 32nd, and then the New York Islanders of next June come in and take your lottery pick. So
well, that's probably what would happen. So
yeah. Okay, so yes, Scott mentioned it earlier. We'd have our preseason predictions on Wednesday's episode, dropping the morning of
Bridgette's favorite episode of the year. She says this every year.
I hate it. I'm sitting over here. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, damn it, I forgot about that.
That's
predictions.
Yeah, it's the fun part, We'll see how wrong we are, right or wrong we are, but probably wrong.
My prediction, I was like 90% chance Blumel makes this team. Look at how that went. So
yeah,
more of that for me.
Well,
Wednesday.
to be fair, Blumel lost the roster spot to Jeffrey Viel and John Beecher, and I don't know. You could say Viel had a better camp than Blumel, but I don't think Beecher did.
But do you think they made the right choice?
I think it's all, like I said earlier, because it all worked out for them and everybody cleared waivers. Like, it's what it is. But if they lost one of these guys, like, it'd be fair to be like, hey.
Yeah, and by the way, like, it's possible they would have lost one of Beecher or Viel. Like, Beecher, for as much as everyone here is down on him, like, teams around the league will still look at a player his size with his speed and be like, maybe I can get more there. Like, Viel, I thought it was interesting. Mark Diver tweeted this probably, I don't know, a week ago or so, after one of Viel's really strong preseason games, which, again, like, worth highlighting. He did have a really good camp and played well in the preseason. And Mark Diver tweeted something along the lines of, like, I wonder if he'd get claimed on waivers. And it's like, I brought up AJ Greer a couple years ago where the Bruins thought they were going to get him through, and he got claimed because the Calgary Flames happened to be looking for a player like that who was going to be ultra physical, willing to drop the gloves, wanted that on their team. It's absolutely possible some other team in the league is like, we want that on our team. We don't have it right now. Jeffrey Viel could bring it. A guy who's played, by the way, like 50-something NHL games. He's spent more time in the AHL, but it's not like this is someone with no NHL experience.
He'd go to the Panthers and win a cup.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a perfect Panther right now.
Greer ended up there, so
But it's funny because we said
how many penalty minutes does AJ Greer have this preseason?
That's insane. 322, by the way. 422 penalty minutes in the last two games for those two teams in preseason?
It's crazy.
But
the thing I've never seen before is a goal getting called back because somebody insisted on it that it wasn't supposed to be in the game anymore. Like, what are we doing?
It was insane.
So, like, there were a ton of fines that came out. People might not have been following because, like, other than Dyer's, like, who's really following Panthers Lightning preseason, but it just turned into, like, a brawl fest, just a mess. And so there were a bunch of fines and stuff to come out of it. There was at least one suspension, right?
There was some dirty plays, like blatant hit from behinds, intense to injure. It was bad blood out there.
Yeah, and I saw, like, there was a report that the NHL's been in touch with both organizations about it, and I'm like, I wonder what that conversation is like. Is like, hey, knock it off.
Yeah,
stop.
I'm gonna pull this car over.
Yeah, seriously. But it is interesting because, like, last episode we did mention, like, we were like,
it was actual, like, slap shot goonery.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It was just like stupid.
Tampa Bay had 4 guys on their bench in the second period because half of them were in the box and
there
kicked out of the
7 guys
game.
in the box?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. The first period took over an hour.
I love that. As a broadcaster, that's just absolutely miserable because we're sitting there going, who's ejected? We don't know. We can't even follow this whatever is populating in the box score.
Yeah.
We don't know what to say.
Yeah.
We're just sitting there waiting. We're like, can we get back to hockey?
It was a shit show. But yeah, Bridget, you mentioned predictions earlier, and we talked about.
No, I didn't.
We talked about how we were wrong.
She won't stop talking about it.
we were wrong about Blumel and whatnot. We even mentioned, like, are we not giving enough consideration to like Jeffrey Viel making this team? And we were like, he had a great camp, but sometimes it's the numbers game, and he ends up making it. So, like, yeah, stay tuned for our very accurate predictions on Wednesday.
Yeah, totally nailed it.
I mean, I think we were close last year. Like, if we just want to remind people, I think we all were, like, within a couple points. I mean, I had them in the Stanley Cup final, so
Yeah, super close. I think I said that Pasta and Lindholm and Marchand were going to be a top 5 line in the NHL.
I picked Jeremy Swayman to win the Vezina, guys.
No, it was Yeah, that's did you?
Yes.
Oh God. Oh
Close
Jesus.
last year, guys. This is why I don't like prediction episodes, because I know I was like, oh, someone's gonna find this, and then later they're gonna be like, this idiot. But this time it was Scott. It was the biggest. So, but he loves his prediction episodes.
See, I'm self-deprecating though, so I'll make completely idiotic predictions, but then I'll just laugh at myself. Like,
Yeah, we're laughing at you too.
By the way, I think to start last year, I mentioned that Trent Frederick could be, a big contributor after winning 7th Player Award, and he gets traded. By the way, though, on a line with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I can't wait to see how pissed off McDavid gets when Frederick is 3 zones back in transition, because he's gonna be at least Zach Hyman. I'm interested to see actually how Frederick does, because he is going to just park his ass in front of the net, go into the corners, and just let pucks go off his shin pad. But he, to me, is going to be the prime example of, you want to see just how many people can score with McDavid and Draisaitl, just watch what Frederick does.
yeah, go find that Trent Frederick over-under goal total on whatever your betting platform of choice is, and bet the over.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna whiff on half his chances, and he's still gonna score like 45.
Who would have thought last season, before the trade deadline, that, hey, in 6 months, it's going to be Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, and Trent Frederick. What a line.
It worked out for him.
Obviously, Hyman's out still, right? So, like, and Corey Perry is in LA. So, the Oilers are trying to find somebody of that mold for the time being to play with those two guys. But, Bridgette, you have some thank yous you want to give out on behalf of all of us?
Yes, we got our candy in from Skip and Abigail. They sent it from Switzerland. So if you're watching, it is delicious. I had a few of mine already. Swiss chocolate is some of the best chocolate you'll find. So, Scott, did you already eat all of yours?
Not all of it, but I think like half of it.
I'm gonna steal Brian's because Brian's is still full.
Scott's dentist is thrilled with Skip just sending chocolate the last few months.
No, we appreciate it. It's delicious. I'm glad it didn't melt.
That's
It's been
true.
hot here.
Yeah, we were worried it was like because I think it came like on a Friday or Saturday. We were worried it was gonna just melt sitting out in front of the station, but no, it came out good. And just to update the listener standings, it's now Skip 2 shipments of chocolate. Everyone else 0. So like fucking pick it up, guys.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sweating my cahoons off.
It's very hot in this studio.
I'm sweating so bad.
The like AC, the temperature thing on the wall doesn't even work. So like, yeah.
I think we can be done.
Let's wrap this one up. So thank you to Skip and Abigail for sending the chocolates. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.